Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching this edition of Straight Talk. I'm your host, Paul Aker. With me tonight is my guest, Dick Veldt of the Senior Citizens Organization. I'd like to welcome you to the show, Dick. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here.
How you doing?
Good.
How are things going over there at the association?
Very well. We have active programs and active people, and we have a good life program going.
Tell me a little bit about that lunch program. I heard it's one of the best ones in town in terms of nutrition and whatnot.
We have to meet minimum USDA requirements for that one meal, one-third of the minimum RDA, the recommended daily allowances for vitamins, nutrition. And we have an approved central menu approved by the Commission on Aging. And that's going to be a 16-week cycle. So if you come today, then 16 weeks from today, expect the same lunch.
Expect the same lunch.
That's right. Please.
Only prepared newly.
Yeah, we don't say that. That's right. Yeah.
That's good. And tell me, is this something that, because I've been concerned about my nutrition here lately, is this something that's open to the public? Can anybody join in for the fun, or do you have to be over a certain age?
I would like to say that everybody can come, but I think the restaurants in town would not appreciate the competition. Primarily it's for senior citizens who are over 60 or guests of senior citizens. And for our target population, frankly, is local, low-income minority elders. And that doesn't mean that we don't serve other seniors, but that's our target population. So we try to emphasize not only in the congregate meal program over there, but we also have a home-delivered program where we take lunches to people who can't get out.
In Oregon, the state that I was in before I moved to Alaska, they had a program called Store to Door, which basically and Meals on Wheels, two different things. That one was they brought groceries to folks that were convalescent, couldn't really get out, and then the other one was they actually brought meals, hot meals to people.
Right.
Are you talking about something like that?
Yes, we bring hot meals to people, to seniors who are homebound. And on Friday, for example, today, my driver would also bring 2 frozen meals for each person for the weekend so that they could heat them up on the weekend in their microwave and use that for the weekend meals then.
And now where do you come up with the funding for that? Is that, you talk about the FDA, I assume that it's partially funded through federal money?
That's true. It's federal money. Some of it is administered through the Alaska Commission on Aging, which used to be the older Alaska Commission. And so that's a state organization. And they have a program called the NTS program, the Nutrition and Transportation Support Program, or Title III, that's derived from the Older Americans Act of 1965. That's a section of that act. So that we're funded by them approximately $3 a meal. That's an approximation. And then the rest of the funding comes from the city helps us out with grants, and we also operate a 15-unit apartment house over there. And the money over and above the regular expenses there are also used to help subsidize the program.
How much does $3 a meal, how far does that go in the city of Veldt? Is that...
That's less than half of our cost of the meal.
A couple other questions regarding not just the nutrition of the elderly or the senior citizens, I should say, but not just nutrition, but some issues overall. I've seen reports that say the nation is forgetting its older people. In other words, the people that basically is coming up on the baby boom generation and getting close to that point.
That's true.
And the nation is increasingly kind of putting them to the side and moving on and not remembering the people that brought us to this point. Do you have any feelings or bring any information to this talk?
I think that Alaska is probably in the forefront. I've been to conferences down in the lower 48, to Indianapolis last June for the Nutrition and Aging Services Program. And there is a White House Conference on Aging coming up next May of 1995. And so far I've been invited to present testimony 2 places. They have area conferences. One was in Indianapolis. Then we're doing another one on teleconference here in Alaska. And there will be at least 7 people from Alaska go to the White House Conference on Aging. And it deals with all of those issues, nutrition, dementia-related problems, assisted living facilities, all of those senior issues.
And there are a lot of issues out there. And one of the things that, just to bring this in perspective, how large our number of citizens is that are over 60, 65, what is it? I think I saw a curve that showed the people in their middle class, and then the number of senior citizens was almost inflated in proportion with the other numbers. Can you tell me a little bit what it relates to?
I can give you some figures from Valdez, or at least some approximations. When the Senior Citizens Program started in Valdez, this was back about 1980. 1981, the Senior Citizens Group was formed as a nonprofit corporation. By 1983, the building was finished and was occupied. At that time, according to the list of seniors that were in the Valdez area, there were something less than 75 seniors over 60 years old in the Valdez area. Currently now, only 10 years later, there are more than twice that many. And it's projected in 5 years it'll double again. And I like to think that part of that is because some of the seniors who were in Valdez before that time felt the need to leave here. They couldn't afford to stay here. Mm-hmm. Now with more senior citizens programs available and a subsidized lunch program, for example, and things for them to do, and the building was built with state and city money.
Right.
And and now it's owned by the city. We lease it from the city for $1 a year. That's not a bad rate.
Not a bad rate.
So that also is a subsidy, if you will, from the city that helps support our programs.
Had a program like that. My college actually rented out its land to the Capitol in Oregon for $1 a year. So it's interesting how those things work. But moving on to more senior-related issues, one of the things that I think is on the minds of senior citizens, as it is with all Americans, or many Americans at this point, is this issue about taking one's own life. I guess that's about the only way you can say it. There are people that are getting to the point where they're saying, I know it's a controversial one, but it is really gripping the nation, because there are people definitely on both sides that are saying, okay, once we get to a certain point, we want to have the right to die. We have the right to live. It has to be corresponding to the right to die. Yes. Is this something that's playing on senior citizens' minds that you know?
Yes, I do know of it, and I think that is true. For example, we do have forums for living wills at the senior center for those people that want to do that. And I have personally been associated with some of our clients here in town who have definitely, when they were seriously ill and made sure that the doctors knew that they did not want to be resuscitated, the extreme measure type thing. And it's an individual decision, and I wouldn't interfere with that. If people, there's a lot of reasons, there's dementia-related things that decreases the quality of life. And so yes, that is certainly an issue. I think that, I would like to think that the maturity is there, that people would be able to make that decision based on reflection, thoughtful reflection, certainly.
Yeah, and it's one that's bound for even more debate as it heads to the Supreme Court with the Kevorkian cases and whatnot, and something that is just emotionally charged, because life and death is not an easy issue no matter what age you are.
No.
And with loved ones out there, you know, that causes a lot of consternation for many people. But I think part of the thing is that we're not hearing in this debate, not hearing a whole lot of what the senior citizens have to say. The attorneys and Kevorkian, I mean, they seem to have stolen the show, and we're not hearing about what the majority of people out there have to say about it.
I think that that's true, and that's typical of any debate. It's the ones who speak the loudest and are the most radical who are heard. But I think in the meantime, there are people who, no, I'm not saying that I agree with killing yourself, but I think that there are some areas, for example, not requesting for no heroic measures to be instituted. I think that's a whole different issue. Kevorkian, of course, is pretty controversial, and I just do not analyze the player's motives.
Go through his mind, sure. I'm sure you probably share some company there. Guess moving from that to some economic issues, because economic issues, as you know, make the world go round, especially in this country. President Clinton has said that he would embrace senior citizens and embrace the elderly. And then last week we hear this memo that was leaked about cutting off Social Security benefits, or capping them. The COLAs have been down less than, that is cost of living allowance for Social Security benefits are down further this year than they ever have been in terms of allowance. What do the senior citizens, I guess, take of that?
We have, in our apartment complex, for example, we have all aspects of that. We have people who are retired. Some have been retired for a long time. Some of them are on relatively low fixed incomes. Others are still working. I think that people, underestimate the economic impact of seniors on Alaska. For example, there's a study that was just issued in February this year by the Senior Voice magazine. That's the publication of the Older Persons Action Group out of Anchorage, that shows that the impact of senior citizens on the economy of Alaska is somewhere close to $2.5 billion a year. Now, that's a fairly significant resource. And so I think there's too much emphasis on the fact that we're paying out Social Security and all this, and not enough realization of where that money is going. And for the most part, for example, in Valdez, it stays here in the local economy. There's people who work here and shop here and buy everything here as much as they can. A good share of the senior citizens will say, I prefer to shop here locally if I can. If I can get it here, I'd prefer to shop here.
And in terms of the networking that's going on, you mentioned the AI, what was it again, the acronym of the magazine?
The magazine is the Senior Voice, and that's the publication of the Older Persons Action Group, OPEG.
Okay, that's what I was wondering about, because it kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier and the political elements involved here. The ARP, as you know, of course, is one of the most powerful organizations, and they promise to become, I would imagine, more powerful in the future. What type of things are the senior citizens concerned about more than the issues that we've talked about in terms of state government with the elections coming up? And I'm sure that they don't vote as a voice for government or anything like that.
True.
But I'm sure as a group they have a bit different opinions than some of us.
I'm not so sure that it's all that different from the general Runaway community. I was in Anchorage 3 weeks ago for the Alaska Commission on Aging meetings, and since I'm vice president of the State Association for Project Directors, and by coincidence, I had breakfast at a restaurant in Anchorage, and Senator Georgiana Lincoln came in, and I've met her in Juneau, so we sat and talked, and we talked about the fact that seniors need to know, not just seniors, but everybody needs to know where their candidates stand, and not just on senior issues, for example, for seniors. They need to understand all the other aspects of it. So I think that seniors are as concerned, and maybe more so in some cases because they've seen more of other problems, as the general public with other issues related to the election and the campaign.
And part of the question has to be raised simply because the revenues, as we've heard so many times, are declining, and there's definitely going to be cuts out there. In one way or another, we see it in the university system, we see it in the mental health programs, we see it all across the board, not literally, but all over the place in the state. And certainly that is going to raise questions about some of the funding that comes your way and comes senior citizens' way that are partaking in other projects also. What's the feeling there?
The truth is that not just the federal and not just the state, but also the city, of course, is facing declining revenues. So we have to be more creative, and I need to be more creative and in obtaining outside funding. And we are always looking for outside funding, and we have fundraisers. I'll put a plug in for our kitchen. We will not only have a bake sale this year in December as a fundraiser where people bring in baked goods and we sell them, but we're also taking orders for pies. And everybody in Valdez knows what a great cook Lucy Lange is, and she's our cook in the center. And we're taking orders for cream pies and fruit pies and whatever kind of pie you like. And so that helps our fundraising. We have a garage sale in the spring, and so as I say, we have to be creative. There are other institutions who are funding sources that we're in contact with all the time, and we're dependent a lot on volunteers. We do receive help from. There's also an employment program through the state, it's federal money, where we can employ 4 people who are over 55, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's completely funded through this program. They have to be a certain income level in order to get into the program. We also were one of the first participants this year in the program run by the high school, where we have a high school student come in a couple hours every afternoon and volunteer his time, and then he'll get credit for that at the end of the semester. We also are available as a community service organization for people who need to do community service hours, and that's worked out pretty well. We've had some really good help there, and some who continued on even after their hours were over with and continued to stay and help.
Great.
Yes.
Oh, yes. One question that I have is I'd like to know, I guess, about how the housing is going out there. You mentioned that you rent out part of the complex to senior citizens, and I'd like to know how available those units are.
Not very.
Not very.
We have 15 apartments, and they're all occupied, and frankly, there's never been a vacancy since they opened. We have a list.
Makes it tough.
We have a list of somewhere at this point around 18 or 20, and the requirement is that when we have an opening coming up, which we do by coincidence, we start at the top of the list and call everybody on the list until we receive an affirmative response that yes, they will move in. And so there's no guarantees that if you put your name on the list, even if you're a senior and you put your name on the list, that number one, there's no guarantee that anybody's going to move out sometime soon.
Right.
And number two, there's no guarantee that somebody above you will not take the apartment. So we have no guarantees. We have no problem keeping it filled, I can assure you.
Yeah, and not that I think that you did, simply because I've been in Fairbanks and Anchorage, where they both have severe problems with not undercutting, but not having enough room in their facilities.
Yes.
People actually almost out on the streets, if you will. What, as a state and as a community, if anything, should we be doing about this?
That's a good question. Part of the Alaska Commission on Aging meetings in Anchorage 3 weeks ago included trips to the Chugiak Senior Center, the Palmer Senior Center, the Wasilla Senior Center, and the Houston Center. 3 out of the 4 of those people have either just recently completed or are in the process of completion of additional senior housing. But the money for that has had to come from private sources. These are being run by private and not through the state.
Right.
There is some federal money through Farm and Home Administration, and there's some other money available. There is some money available through the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. There are a lot of strings attached to that, and because of the fact that that property over there belongs to the city, we can't get directly into that. There's certainly a need for more housing in Valdez, and I think that if it's built, it will be built by a private corporation and maybe run by a private corporation.
Let me ask you a little bit about the difference, other than the fact that private and public obviously work for different profit incentives, but what is the difference in the level of care and how the folks are treated?
It's a good question. There's all different levels of care depending on the situation. In our facility, now this sounds cruel, but in our facility, as the rules were set up, the people there are independent. They need to be able to take care of themselves. There's no health care associated with our facility. We're right next door to the clinic and the hospital, so that's fairly easy. But there are others, for example, in the Palmer Center, they have assisted living units. They have 43 of them adjacent to the senior center, as well as the senior housing that they have there. Now, the assisted living apartments can really be nice, and both people from a couple can live there, and they're set up strictly for handicapped people. For example, you can run your wheelchair right into the bathtub or the shower area, and all the cabinets are down low. We have 2 apartments that are handicap accessible in our facility, but the ones that are designed for assisted living, and they have full-time nursing care and helpers and so on, that's I'm not sure. In our hospital here in Valdez does a fine job of taking care of those type of people. They have a swing bed facility, and there's at least 2 people involved in that right now. I don't think that there would be, speaking economically, that it would be practical to build an assisted living facility here in Valdez.
I see. Well, that brings me to a good question, I think, anyway. What is your project? In other words, what is the vision from here? What are you going to do with the place?
Well, we're continuously upgrading our facilities. for those of you who have not been to the senior center recently, you'll be pleasantly surprised this winter that you can pull up in front and let people off, and you don't have to wade through slush and snow to get there. We've raised the level to comply with ADA requirements, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and we put a lot of concrete in there. We raised it up and put the ramps out a different direction. We have, we're in the process of trying to add onto the building with room for a walk-in cooler and a walk-in freezer, because in order to get the USDA commodities, we need to have additional storage space. We get that, but we have to kind of crowd it into the freezer we have out in one of the carports, and so that's going on. There's a lot of minor things we've done, but
and the addition of a building is a big project for anybody, any organization.
That's true.
Building something on. When you're doing that, you have to talk to the citizens. It is their building and they're leasing. And what type of zoning things are you considering?
That's correct. We've already got the permit from the state fire marshal based on the plans that we have. And it's really not a major construction item. It'll be a 20 by 28 building, and I've been involved in engineering, including construction engineering, all my life, and all my working life anyway. And so for us, it's not a major problem. We needed to get a lot of concrete down, the footings and foundation, get a slab there, and get the walls up and the roof, and that's about it. And we need to extend the sprinkler system. But the major problem, as usual, is funding.
Now, does that have to be accessible also under the ADA?
No, it does not. The apartment complex does, and the facility does, the activity center. But this is strictly storage, and so it comes off outside the kitchen, and we put it that way. So technically it doesn't have to be. It will be. It is accessible because of the size of the doors we have to have and the ramps and so on.
Okay, so you're covering all your bases there.
That's right.
Let me ask you one more time, as we're running out of time here, just to do a community service, I guess, and let people know what it is that the fundraiser that you have in mind and any other type of events that are happening there, so people that don't get a chance to either see or help out the older folks in the community, they can do that.
I can, at this point, put a plug in for United Way, and State Plummer will appreciate that, I think, but they have been a major source of help to us, including some funding to help us get started on the building.
Right.
And a few years ago, buying a new van for us to help out with the home-delivered meals and transportation. We take some of our seniors to work, to the bank, to the pharmacy, the post office, whatever. The fundraisers, as I say, we have the bake sale coming up. That'll be, I believe, December 16th. The pie sale, you can order those anytime. You can get those, pick those up. You can order those for whatever day you want and pick them up for Thanksgiving or Christmas or just somebody's birthday.
Shouldn't have said that. I know where I'm going to be spending my extra change now.
And the number for that is 835-5032.
So there you go. And I appreciate you very much for coming in, Mr. Veldt.
My pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure having you on. And I'd like to remind everybody that coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, you can watch the Valdez Nightly News again. It's a repeat of this evening's episode, but you can watch it again in its entirety starting at 10. And then at 10:30, this edition of Straight Talk will also replay, so you can watch all the action that you may have missed earlier this evening. Also, Monday night, Halloween, we're going to have a local spook. No, I'm just joking. Larry Mercer is a local tattoo artist, and he's going to be here and telling us about some of the tales that go on inside the tattoo parlor. So you want to watch that Monday night on Straight Talk. Until Monday night, everybody, make it a great night.